Now, when we talk about James being the younger brother of Jesus, I know some of you might be thinking, man, that must have been awesome to have Jesus as your older brother, right? If you compare your older brother to Jesus, like, man, I'd rather have Jesus as my older brother, so much better. But I would argue it's not. I actually think it would be really horrible to have Jesus as your older brother. And you know where I'm going, right? Do any of you guys have a golden brother or sister that your parents always compare you, right? When you have a brother or sister that you know your parents favor or that they always are the good one, you're always the bad one, what do you always hear? Why can't you be more like? Can you imagine if Jesus was your older brother? Can you imagine if you're ever going to fight with him? Who do you think your parents are going to side with? And they won't be wrong for showing favoritism, by the way, because they should show favoritism to Jesus, who's perfect over you. For you guys showing favoritism to your kids, I mean, we're going to learn from James, that's a sin to show, that kind of partiality. But if you're talking about someone who's perfect in God versus you, who's going to win in that battle, right? So can you imagine the chip on your shoulder you've been living with, your oldest brother, who's literally perfect? Every fight, you lost because your parents know they don't even need to see what the fight was or what started. They'll be like, oh, you're wrong. You did something wrong. Because there's no way Jesus could do anything wrong. You see, that's what it's like to live with Jesus as your older brother. I mean, it would be very difficult to live under the shadow of a perfect brother. So here's the thing. We might assume that being related to Jesus or being in his family will make it easier for you to believe that he's God. I will actually argue the complete opposite. The people that was the last people to believe in Jesus were the people who knew him really well. The Galilee they were the only ones that didn't respond to the signs. Because what did Jesus say? A prophet is without honor in his own hometown. You guys understand this? Do you guys grow up with anybody who's quote unquote important today? Maybe they became really rich, they got a high-paying job, or maybe some people are even famous from your same high school. You know what's the first thing people often do when they see someone they know make it big? Dude, I got better grades than him in chemistry in 10th grade. We denigrate the people that we know. So when we start to talk about James, you guys initially might be shocked to know James never believed that Jesus was God. He never supported his ministry, his entire ministry. How do I know that? Who was at the cross when Jesus was dying? Was any of his siblings there? The closest relative was the Apostle John, who was his cousin. Everyone else wasn't there. You know whose responsibility it was to take the dead body off the cross and to bury them? It should have been the family members. James wasn't there. The book of Jude is another brother of Jesus, by the way. Jude wasn't there. So let's look at James a little closer. Let's start with Mark chapter 6, verse 3. Now, here's the context of what's going on here. This is towards the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And what we see is that people are starting to come to faith in him because he's doing these miraculous things that no one can explain away. But when he goes back to his hometown, as I mentioned, his hometown is the last place, the people who are the most stubborn. Notice what they said about Jesus in Mark chapter 6, verse 3. Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of, who's the first name listed? James, the author of this book, because he was the most prominent sibling in history. And Joses and Judas, which is another word for Jude, right? The book of Jude, that's the other sibling. And Simon, and then we know Jesus even had half-sisters. Unfortunately, they're not named because people didn't care about sisters, unfortunately, during this time. We don't know their names, but are not his sisters here with us? So we see Jesus has a family, younger brothers, younger sisters. They know he's a carpenter, he's the son of Mary, and they took offense at him. This is when Jesus was teaching from the book of Isaiah, pointing to himself as the Messiah. Now, here's one thing I want to highlight in Mark chapter 6, verse 3. Do you notice they called him the son of whom? Mary. You never call a Jewish man by their mother. You always call them by their father, the son of Joseph. You know why they never called him the son of Joseph? Because they all believed that he was an illegitimate son. Yeah, virgin birth. That was the hometown was thinking, oh, he's the son of Mary, he's not the son of Joseph. We know the story, right? And remember, there are small towns during that time. Gossip spread really quick. Oh yeah, how did Mary get pregnant before they were, betrothed completely and married? Oh, she says she got pregnant by God, right? Would you really buy that, right? So the hometown is like, this is an illegitimate bastard son who's a son of a carpenter. So his whole life, they seen Jesus just do a blue-collar job. Jesus never did a single miracle throughout his childhood. He didn't do a single miracle till after he was baptized by the Holy Spirit because he took on full humanity. So don't think of Jesus as this child just doing miracle workers. He was just a regular child. The book of the Gospel of Luke says that he grew up in stature and wisdom, meaning he grew up physically and he grew up mentally. He learned things. Did you know that? Who taught him theology growing up? His parents. Mary taught him. Joseph taught him. Can you imagine that? In fact, Mary's going to play a significant role in his ministry because she knew from the angel, what his purpose was in this life. Now, the reason why Joseph is not mentioned in the Gospels as well is because Joseph died by this point. Mary was a widow. And so Jesus, for a Jewish person, when the dad passes away, it was the oldest son's responsibility to financially take care of the widow mother. This explains why Jesus didn't start his ministry till he was 30, because he was working as a carpenter to financially provide for his mom and his younger brothers and sisters. That's why one of the final things on the cross Jesus does is he's concerned about is his widow mother. He says, behold, this is your son, pointing to whom? Not to James, because he wasn't there, to John, his best friend, his cousin. And John, he says, this is your mother. And do you notice after that point, John is not in the book of Acts. We don't see him. He doesn't start his ministry as a pastor till way later in life, till his 50s, 60s. And then he doesn't write his first letters to 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and then he writes the final book of the Bible, Revelation. You know why he was absent for the next 20 to 30 years when the church was booming with Peter and all these things? Because he listened to his best friend, his cousin, and he took care of Mary until she passed away. So that was the family dynamic. James wasn't the one taking care of him. James wasn't there. He was completely absent. In fact, we see in Mark chapter 3, verse 31 to 35, Jesus' brothers and sisters thought he was crazy for the stuff he was saying. Look at Mark chapter 3, verse 31 to 35. And his mother and brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him, and a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, your mother, your brothers are outside seeking you. And he answered them, who are my mothers? Who are my brothers? And looking at those who sat around him, he said, here are my mothers and brothers, for whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. Right? So imagine you're James for a second. You grew up with him. He's starting to become popular, and he literally disowns you in front of everybody. This is not my brothers and sisters. It's those who are doing the will of God. In the same chapter is that they came outside to bring Jesus in because people were going to pick up stones and kill him because they thought he was talking crazy. What are you doing, Jesus? You're getting yourself killed. And so what we start to see is that there wasn't this close support and relationship between James and Jesus. Jesus' brothers and sisters did not support his ministry. In fact, Jesus didn't even identify with his brothers and sisters. He said, the people who do the will of the Father are my brothers and sisters, not them. And then we see there's a little bit of a change in John chapter 7, verse 3 to 5, but we notice John points out why there's a change, and it's not for a good reason. This is past the midway point of Jesus' ministry. So he's very popular by this point. He's done many miracles. But the problem is that he's primarily done these miracles in the countryside, in the places where there aren't a lot of people. So James and his brothers, they come up with a plan. Starting at verse 3 in John chapter 7. So his brothers said to him, leave here and go to Judea. Why? Because Jerusalem is in Judea. Go to the capital. Go to the city. Stop staying in the countryside. Why should you go to the city? That your disciples also may see the works, referring to the miracles you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Now, from the surface, it looks like they support his ministry. Jesus, you can't be doing all these miraculous things when no one is watching. Go to Judea. Go to Jerusalem. Let the whole world see your amazing miracles. But notice the director's commentary. What does John say? Why did they say this, according to the Apostle John? Verse 5. For not even his brothers believed in him. Wait a minute. How can you say his brothers don't believe in him when they want him to become popular? because there's a big group of people who are fascinated with the signs of Jesus. They're fascinated with the miracles of Jesus. They are fascinated with what Jesus can do for them, but they were never, ever truly believing in who he claimed to be. They're looking at Jesus as this genie. Well, free bread, 20,000 people come. The next day, he starts teaching about what that means. They all leave except for the 12. So here, even his brothers, his siblings, according to the Apostle John, at this point in his ministry, they didn't believe him. They didn't believe he was the Messiah. They didn't believe any of the claims he made as his being divine, being the Messiah, being the anointed one. But what did they want? They wanted him to be popular, though, because they liked the miracles he was doing. And they knew if Jesus gets popular, what happens to them by association? They get popular. Right? It's like that person you knew back in the day who all of a sudden is a big person. Now you want to get close to them when you were never friends with them. Right? James was never close to his brother Jesus. Now he wants to get close to him. Why? Because Jesus, whoa, you're onto something now. We thought you were crazy in the beginning, but now you're popular. If you're going to be popular, go all the way to the city and get popular. And John's saying they don't even believe in Jesus at this point. Do you see that? Crazy, right? But here's the thing. Before you judge James, let me ask you, what would it take for you to believe that your brother or sister is God? How many of you guys have a sibling? What would it take for you to believe and die that your brother or sister is God?